Terror descended on the coast of Northumbria as armed raiders attacked the defenseless monastery of St. Cuthbert of Lindisfarne. The terrified monks watched helplessly as the invaders made off with a haul of treasure and a clutch of captives. Seaborne pirates from Scandinavia who would prey on coastal communities in northwestern Europe for more than 2 centuries and create for themselves a reputation as fierce and pitiless warriors. It was the first recorded raid by the Vikings. In this episode of Endless Info, we explore the world of the Vikings. But before we begin, consider subscribing. Many historians commonly associate the term Viking to the Scandinavian term Vikinger, a word for pirate. However, the term is meant to reference overseas expeditions and was used as a verb by the Scandinavian people for when the men traditionally took time out of their summers to go a Viking. While many would believe these expeditions entailed the raiding of monasteries and cities along the coast, many expeditions were actually with the goal of trade and enlisting as foreign mercenaries. The vast majority earned a decent living through agriculture or along the coast by fishing. Advances in shipping technology in the 7th and 8th centuries meant that boats were powered by sails rather than solely by oars. These were then added to vessels made of overlapping planks to create longships, swift shallow drafted boats that could navigate coastal and inland waters and land on beaches. At first, the Viking raids were small-scale affairs, a matter of a few boatloads of men who would return home once they had collected sufficient plunder, or if the resistance they encountered was too strong. But in the 850s, they began to overwinter in southern England, in Ireland, and along the Seine in France, establishing bases from which they began to dominate inland areas. The raids reached a crescendo in the second half of the 9th century. In Ireland, the Vikings established long forts, including at Dublin, from which they dominated much of the eastern part of the island. In France, they grew in strength as a divided Frankish kingdom fractured politically, and in 885, a Viking army besieged and almost captured Paris. The mid-10th century reign of Harald Bluetooth, by the way, Bluetooth technology that we use today is named after this guy. He was king of a newly unified, powerful, and Christianized Denmark, marked the beginning of a second Viking age. Large-scale raids, often organized by royal leaders, hit the coasts of Europe and especially England, where the line of kings descended from Ethelred the Great was faltering. Harald's rebellious son, Sven Forkbeard, led Viking raids on England beginning in 991 and conquered the entire kingdom in 1013, sending King Ethelred into exile. Sven died the following year, leaving his son Canute to rule a Scandinavian empire on the North Sea. After Canute's death, his 2 sons succeeded him, but both were dead by 1042, and Edward the Confessor, son of the previous king, returned from exile and regained the English throne from the Vikings. Upon his death in 1066, the son of Edward's most powerful noble laid claim to the throne. Harald's army was able to defeat an invasion led by the last great Viking king, Harald Hardrada of Norway, at Stamford Bridge near York, but fell to the forces of William, Duke of Normandy, just weeks later. Crowned King of England on Christmas Day in 1066, William managed to retain the crown against further Viking challenges. The events of 1066 in England effectively marked the end of the Viking Age. By that time, all of the Scandinavian kingdoms were Christian, and what remained of Viking culture was being absorbed into the culture of Christian Europe. Today, signs of the Viking legacy can be found mostly in the Scandinavian origins of some vocabulary and place names in the areas in which they settled, including northern England, Scotland, and Russia. In Iceland, the Viking left an extensive body of literature, the Icelandic sagas, in which they celebrated the greatest victories of their glorious past. Thank you for watching.